Yeah, so we're here at the Nakashima Studios, and it is October, and it's annual tour day for Docomomo. And I'm Bill Whitaker. I'm a curator at the University of Pennsylvania at the Architectural Archives, and I'm here with Mira Nakashima, who's a good friend, somebody who I've known for almost 30 years now, and I've been fortunate to bring groups up here for a good long time, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And so today we're seeing a building that we usually don't get to see, which is Mira's house, and that's what you see right here. And we also have the joy of actually having Mira here to tell us a little bit about it, and where we are, and the history of this place. So hello, Mira.
Hi, Bill, again.
Nice to see you.
Been seeing a lot of Bill these days because of the Shofuso Modernism exhibition and activities that didn't happen, the virtual activities that we invented instead. And so welcome to my house, which is not usually open to the public. My father started building it. He bought this piece of property across from the studio in the late 60s and decided to build me a house as a bribe to come home in 1970. So the house wasn't finished when we decided to move here. We lived in the Konoid studio for a while this house had the floors put in and things like that. And I had 3 small children at the time. It was just a miracle that nobody fell down the steps or fell off the porch very often. So we lived many happy years here. My husband and I still live here, and the children, of course, are all gone. But there are basically three bedrooms in this building. And then my grandmother, after my grandfather died, used to travel around to visit each of her 4 children during the year, and she would come and visit, and she came to visit, and Dad built this house for my grandmother in 1972 or so.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. It's the same structure as the reception house, which we will see later. It's a scissors truss construction, both of the little buildings, and it's combined with reinforced concrete. As you can see, this porch here is contiguous with the understructure of this building. It has the subfloor made into the floor. So the 3x8s are laid flat and side to side, and they run the whole length of the building. So there is no space between the real space between the basement and the upper floor.
We're across from Aquatong Road, from where the studios are. So you actually grew up on the other side of the street.
This is true.
And so your dad had bought this property in 1960. You were studying and working as an architect over in Japan at the time, right?
Yeah, I graduated from college in 1963, and then I went to Japan to study. So I was there until 1966. And then we lived in Pittsburgh for 3 years. I didn't come back here till 1970.
So were you a part of the design process for this house? Did you sit down at the drafting table with your dad or at the table to talk about it? Or did he just do what he wanted to do?
He basically did what he wanted to do. When it got to the details like lighting fixtures and plumbing fixtures and stuff, he had me have a little bit of input, but the rest of it was already a done deal. I didn't have much choice.
And in terms of the construction of this house, who was building it? I mean, I think a lot of people might have the impression that your dad was out here on the construction site building everything.
Well, he probably was here almost every day, but one of our older workmen, Robert Lovett, was mostly the builder in charge.
And he had built a lot of the buildings on site.
He worked on almost every single building across the road.
Yeah, and so across the road, we're talking there's 15 buildings over there, and this is the one on the other side of the street.
Right.
Is it far enough away from work? Do you feel like you can get enough away from what's going on across the way?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's very nice. I really like the commute, although Aquatong Road is getting so busy, sometimes I have to wait a long time to get across the street.
Right, sure. In the structure of your house, your dad's using a scissor truss.
Yes.
And so that creates a lower roof area, which is the ceiling within the living areas of the house. Mm-hmm. And then there's a higher pitched, which is the exterior space. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the scissor truss and why your dad was interested in that.
Well, I think, being an architect, he was always interested in different ways of spanning space. And he must have been into his scissors. He was doing shells for a while, different kinds of shells across the road. And somehow he got interested in scissors trusses. And my house was probably the first practice model for the reception house, which happened later. And then after my house was built, he built another smaller structure, which also has a scissors truss roof. And this is the practice model. Just you thought it was a neat way of spanning space, and you get the sort of eccentric roof line, which he enjoyed.
We're walking off into the sunset. So we've crossed Aquatong Road, and we're now over on the main part of the Nakashima studios. Mira's house is across the way, and you can hear the drone of the shop, which is just behind us here. But we're standing in front of the family house. This is your first home, in a sense, here on the property, at least permanent. And so this is the house that your dad started building in what, about 1946?
About 1940. I was about 5, 1947, maybe 46, 47.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's some really beautiful shots of you helping your dad build the house, right?
This was definitely a hand-built George Nakashima house. He did everything from the concrete blockwork to the stonework to the plumbing and the electrical wiring. And they didn't have enough money for purchasing insulation, so there was a cavity between the inside and outside walls that he filled with sawdust as insulation. And when they redid the house, the original house had poured concrete. I'm sorry. The original house had poured concrete tiles, which my father poured himself and laid as the first roof. And in the mid 1970s, it started leaking so badly they built the second roof over it, which is the roof that you now see. There's still the concrete tiles underneath there somewhere. Right. But the roof, the slants in the front covered the cistern. We didn't have enough money to drill a well at that point, so we collected rainwater for washing in the cistern that's underneath that slanted roof.
Okay, so we're now at the reception house, and this is George Nakashima's last building, and he really saw it as an opportunity to bring together a lot of ideas with respect to design and construction and architecture in one building. And so, Mira, why don't you tell us a little bit about why did he need to build this? Why this building? Besides, really getting to test oneself once again with the challenge of architecture.
Mm. Well, I think Dad realized he was getting older, and he was working on the project, which is the biggest project we've ever done, furnishing the Junzo Yoshimura Japanese house up at Botanical Hills for Nelson Rockefeller. So I think he had money in the bank, and he decided he had money in the bank, time to build another building. And when I was growing up, Dad would have parties, Dad and Mother would have parties, and there was no real place that was set up for entertaining, and there was no dishwasher on the property. So Dad decided he would use the finest materials available to him to make this building. And so he imported plaster from Japan. It's called kyokabe. And he used very fine materials in the floors, and he wanted to have a Japanese bath. So he had a local craftsman build a Japanese bath. And he also realized that in the 1970s, we were going to encounter a fossil fuel usage crisis. And he built this building that would be sustainable materials and use sustainable materials to heat it and to heat the bathtub. And we have plenty of scrap wood. So there's a big fireplace inside that heats the entire building. The Japanese bath is heated by a Japanese wood-burning boiler he imported from Japan. And it also had an electric dishwasher and a full set of dishes, so we didn't have to lug the dishes around and wash them in different places on the property. So it was his and mother's favorite place for dinner parties in his later years.
Okay, so we've come inside the reception house here. You know, we entered in, and there's this kind of traditional, almost Genkan, where you're able to take off your shoes. And I love how your father incorporated the windowsill is actually the bench. So he's making really nice, efficient use of space. And the floor there is slate, right?
It's slate, and it's got radiant heat under it.
Oh, that's very nice. Yes. So it's a very nice, welcoming, you know, feel when you take your shoes off and you come in. And so then when you come in, there's this amazing floor, right? There's some planks here that are almost look like 14, 18 inches wide. Some are thin, like 2 or 3 inches. What's this floor? What's the floor made out of?
Well, Dad said he always had to keep building because he had lumber that wasn't good enough to make furniture, but it was fine for doing floors with. And this is bloody birch. The lighter planks are bloody birch, and the darker planks are walnut, and they are completely random width, random length, and it was like a jigsaw puzzle putting them together.
But it's pretty magnificent, huh?
Yeah, no, it's a pretty nice floor.
Yeah. So the space that we're in, it's, you know, everything is basically in one room. Yes. Right? So that there's an eating area, there's a sitting area, there's a place right next to the fireplace. There's a beautiful little window seat with shoji screens that can open, and then also a little corner desk that's quite charming. So, you know, so then also there's some other details that are in this space. You know, the basic living areas are all in one room.
Yeah.
So the ceiling, we're seeing the underside of the scissor truss. So we have these wonderful columns that are kind of in the middle of the house, it seems, and that you can see one beam that's thicker connecting with 2 beams that are thinner, and then they overlap in the center, right? So that's the scissor idea, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, very elegant. So why the red color? What's the red color about?
Oh, I think that's a nod to Pennsylvania barns.
So that like the redware of the dishes and the red of the barns. Really beautiful. And that we also see the connections. There's bolts there, right? I mean, I think a lot of people imagine Japanese traditional architecture don't use bolts. Your dad used bolts, right?
He did, but he also used Japanese joints. I think the beam over there has a Japanese joint in it.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the fireplace, it's substantial. I mean, it feels almost overscaled for the room, but it's doing quite a bit, right? It's more than just a fireplace.
Well, it heats the entire building. It has a plenum behind it and a fan system to improve the efficiency of the fire. Yeah. It's built like a Franklin stove, so it has a metal hood. And he envisioned that, you know, at one point, if you got enough fire going in there, you could actually cook on the hood of the fireplace. He also has a little pocket on the side where you could use as an oven if you got the.
You could bake some bread.
Yes, if the oven was, if the fireplace was hot enough.
Yeah. So, but then there's an extraordinary Japanese room in here. So tell us about that.
It's a 4.5 mat room, which is kind of traditional small tea ceremony room in Japan. And I think he thought of it as, well, it's the only almost traditional Japanese room on the property. It has a tatami mat floor, and it has the Japanese plaster walls.
But then there's the extraordinary bathtub that's in this place. That's the most fun bathtub I've ever seen in my life.
Oh.
What was your dad thinking?
I don't
You don't know?
No, Dad never told me what he was thinking, but he did invite each of my children, who were quite young at the time, to make little designs that he would have the tile craftsman put into the bathtub and the floor around the bathtub. And he used Japanese penny round tiles to give him some kind of flexibility for executing those designs.
Yeah. So usually when we do tours, we're not able to really focus on fine-grained detail. There's usually too many people in this space, and people are taking a lot in. And so I wanted to take this opportunity to focus a little bit more on something as simple as a handle. And this is actually a bookcase. You know, there's some storage for pottery and other household objects, but this handle right here and the cabinet that goes with it, let's talk a little bit about this handle, you know, because when it comes to design, the place where a designer actually, you know, knows that someone's going to touch and engage with, you know, what does that mean? What do you think about as a designer when you're challenged with a handle?
Well, in this particular building, he wanted to use the finest materials available to him because I think he realized this would probably be his last building. And to him, the English oak burl was very, very precious. He had gone to England himself and purchased some logs and brought them back. And he said the Queen of England should have sold her crown jewels and kept those logs, but he got the logs. So this is one of the last remnants of the English oak burl log that he purchased.
And so what is a burl? What does a burl do?
A burl is an unusual growth pattern in a tree. There have been many different theories about why they grow. Sometimes it's an insect infestation. Sometimes it's a genetic aberration. Sometimes it's the tree trying to regrow after a forest fire. There are many different reasons for a burling.
So are we looking at something that would have been vertical in a tree or horizontal?
I think it's probably vertical because you can see the sap grain along the edge where the tree was growing and the heartwood, which is darker.
Yeah. So we're going to go in and we're going to open up the kitchen, right? So
you have to get that thing out of the way first.
Yeah. I really love these handholds that you just put your finger in and you can just set it here.
I think that's a holdover from Raymond's office.
I think so.
Yeah.
So then we're able to push this in.
Slide that in. Yep.
And then the second. And then the third. Oops, I got stuck.
Yeah, get them out of the way. All right.
And then number 4. Put the door back. Very clever. And then there we have it. We've got a kitchen.
Yay!
So let's talk about this magnificent table. So just tell me about it.
Well, I guess Dad decided that the space needed a table sort of this size, and he happened to have 2 adjacent planks of a beautiful English walnut tree that he also got from England. It's very unusual in its coloration. Usually English walnut is not this dark. It's almost as dark as ebony. And so he put it together and he came up with this shape, which is a beautiful shape. If you're sitting around the table, it's sort of roundish, but it's not totally round. And I believe this was the prototype peace altar, which came a few years after he made this table. He called it the Sanso table, and it is only 5 feet, approximately 5 feet long, so it has one single support underneath. When he got to making the peace altars, they were 4 times this size, so he needed a little more support. But it's a wonderful way to bring people together around a table. And someone was saying that the shape is, it's not a perfect round, so it represents the way peace is made around the world, irregularly shaped and uneven, and it has lots of flaws and needs fixing and polishing and shaping, and that's the way life is. But it's a lovely table. It does, when you're actually having a dinner party here, it's a long way to reach to the other side of the table.
Yes,
we use a lazy Susan.
Yeah. So just explain to me so this piece of wood was on top of this one, or vice versa.
Either way, they were just adjacent planks of the same log.
So it's just opened up, and that's a butterfly, or what? Book? It's a book match. Yeah, mm-hmm. I was mixing it up with
the butterfly.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And then when you rub your hand across here, you can see there's actually a lot of movement in the surface.
Yeah, it didn't come out. When the planks dry, they don't always dry flat. And those are the saw marks that were there. We just sort of sanded them down. Yeah. He didn't want to lose the thickness completely. So he left that sort of rough spot there.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've always admired about this table is it's a little bit lower.
Yes, it is.
And in terms of how you're talking about people coming together and making people feel like they come together, it's actually lower to your legs.
Mhm.
So you feel like you're actually closer to other people than other dining tables. At least that's how I've always felt sitting here.
Yes, that's true.
And that's I'm sure that's intended.
No,
right?
Especially for short people like us. It's
Okay.
perfect.
I'm not a 6 foot taller. Yeah. Yeah. No, really beautiful. This has been a wonderful visit, Mira. Thank you for having us here. And I know that a lot of people are thinking about, visiting places like that, being in places like this. And we just want to thank you for opening these places up and sharing them with us today. Thanks.
Thank you very much for leading the tour.